Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we are taking a look at duty.pdf,
Ah,
which is a document that's kind of laying out a practical approach to life based on the law of Thelema. Now, if you're anything like me, when I first came across this, you're thinking, Thelema, what? But stick with us here, because this deep dive is about discovering some really intriguing ideas,
yeah,
such as aligning with your true will,
right.
and even why this document advocates for worshiping everything.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
DD.PDF presents this really unique framework for living
Yeah.
based on principles that are not what you would normally think about or are used to. It's less about following rules that someone else gives you
Okay.
and more about understanding yourself and the powers
Right.
in the universe.
Yeah, it all seems to kind of revolve around this idea of the law of Thelema, specifically, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Right.
Now, at first glance, it does sound a bit like anything goes.
I can see why you would think that.
Right.
But the key here is understanding what true will means.
Okay.
It's not about just doing whatever you want in the moment.
Right.
It's about discovering what your unique purpose is in the universe, like what you were born to do.
Okay.
And this document says that you should also remember
Yeah.
to have love and understanding for other people while you're doing that.
So it's not just about giving into every whim you have, but finding your core purpose and living according to that while also considering other people.
That's it. That's the balance.
Okay, so balance is really important here.
Yeah.
And speaking of balance,
Mm-hmm.
duty.pdf doesn't shy away from the idea of self-discovery.
Right.
Right off the bat, it says, find yourself to be the center of your own universe. That's a bold statement.
Totally. It's not about thinking you're better than everyone, though.
Okay.
It's about understanding that you are just as important as everyone else.
Okay.
So it's about understanding that you are the center of your own universe.
Gotcha.
Not necessarily the universe.
I can see how that kind of sets the stage for more self-exploration.
Yeah.
How does that tie into all the other duties that are in the document?
So the document goes on to talk about how important it is to understand yourself. And not just the good parts, but everything about yourself.
Okay.
The good and the bad.
So no picking and choosing what we want to focus on.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Oh.
You have to develop all parts of yourself,
Okay.
not just the ones that you like.
That sounds like a tall order.
It is. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The document says, be strong. Then canst thou bear more joy if thou drink by the 8 and 90 rules of art.
Yeah.
But if thou do aught joyous, let there be subtlety therein. But exceed.
Whoa. Okay. So exceeding within boundaries. That's
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Could you give us an example of what that looks like?
Okay, so imagine a painter
Okay.
who is really good at what they do. They know all the rules and techniques.
Right.
But then they use all of that
Yeah.
to do something really unique and different. That's what it means.
So it's like disciplined indulgence.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So you're making deliberate choices about what you're doing.
Right.
Not just randomly doing whatever.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that leads into the third duty,
Okay.
which is thinking about all of the different parts of yourself and what they're all there for. Why are you the way you are?
Okay.
What do all of your different qualities do for you?
So it's like taking inventory
Yeah.
of your inner world, all your good stuff, bad stuff, everything.
That's it.
Now, how do you actually put all of that into practice?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's where the fourth duty comes in,
Okay.
which is figuring out what the real purpose of your true will is and then expressing it
Okay.
in the simplest way possible.
So you're not just thinking about yourself all the time.
Right.
You're thinking about how that translates into your purpose in the world and then actually doing something about it.
Right. And this leads right into the fifth duty,
Okay.
which is learning how to use the energies that you control to get the results you want.
Okay, hold on. Manipulate energies.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit mystical.
It does sound a bit out there, I guess.
Yeah.
But think about it like this.
Okay.
When you're in a tough spot, you can either let it control you
Right.
or you can try to change it.
Oh.
Maybe you need to try a different way of doing things
Yeah.
or learn more about it or even ask other people for help.
Right.
It's about taking control
Okay.
instead of just letting things happen to you.
So it's about recognizing those forces at play in your life and then trying to influence them.
Yes.
But not in a bad way.
Right.
In a way that aligns with your true will.
Exactly.
Okay.
The document actually gives you instructions for this.
Oh, wow.
It says that you need to have an understanding of the world around you if you want to manipulate these energies.
Yeah. So that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is.
This idea is shaping your reality
Is.
through manipulating energies. But duty.pdf doesn't stop there.
Nope.
It also goes into detail about interacting with other people.
Right.
Which seems kind of tricky considering it's all about individual will.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right.
And it actually talks about that directly.
Okay.
The first thing it says is, unite yourself passionately with every other focus of consciousness. So it's about knowing that we are all connected, even though we all have our own paths to follow. And it also says, love is the law, love under will.
So you're not supposed to just isolate yourself while
Right.
you're pursuing your true will.
Exactly.
You're supposed to realize that you're part of a bigger picture.
It's like we're all stars,
Okay.
but together we make a constellation.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
So how does that interconnectedness actually play out?
Well, the second duty in this section says that you can't actually hurt another person, even if you're fighting with them.
Okay.
It says that love and war are both like sports,
Okay.
where you're supposed to learn from each other,
Gotcha.
not try to actually destroy each other.
So even when you disagree with somebody, it's
Yeah.
like you're both learning and growing together,
That's a good way to think about it.
right?
And that leads to the third duty,
Okay.
which is not getting in the way of other people's king wills.
Okay.
The document says that every single person is important, and we should respect their choices.
That's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
It means respecting people even if you don't agree with them.
Right.
So no trying to force people to do what you want.
Exactly. Everyone has their own path to follow.
Now, what about times when somebody asks for help?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The document says that you should only help someone if they ask for it,
Okay.
and you should always respect their choices.
So it's like a balance between giving advice and respecting people's freedom. I think that's something our listeners can really relate to.
Yeah, me too.
How does that work for you in your life?
I think it makes my relationship stronger
Okay.
because I'm not always trying to change people.
You're meeting people where they are.
Exactly.
Now, there's one duty that I found really interesting and a little confusing at first.
Okay.
It says worship all.
Yeah.
Now, that seems to contradict the idea of individual will.
It does kind of seem that way.
Right.
But when you really think about it,
Yeah.
it's not about blindly following someone
Okay.
or putting them on a pedestal.
So what is it about?
It's about learning from other people
Okay.
and using your interactions with them to grow. It's seeing every interaction, even the tough ones,
Yeah.
as a chance to learn and grow.
So it's not about religion.
Right.
It's about seeing everyone as valuable
Exactly.
and learning from their perspective.
It's like actively studying other people to better understand the world.
And that goes back to that quote.
To love ye de reverence. To me come ye through tribulation of ordeal, which is bliss.
Yeah, even the hard things can teach us something.
So we can be curious about tough situations.
Right.
Instead of avoiding them.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
The document also talks about checking your own opinions and not just assuming you're right.
Okay.
You have to see if what you think matches up with what you see happening around you.
So it's like constantly learning and growing
Yeah.
and challenging yourself.
That's it.
So now let's talk about how the law of Thelema
Okay.
can be applied to society as a whole.
Okay.
The document says, establish the law of Thelema as the sole basis of conduct.
Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of how this could change society.
Right.
It basically says that people should be free to find their true will, and that's the best way for everyone to be happy.
So instead of telling people how to live,
Yeah,
it's about letting them find their own way.
exactly.
And this ties into the idea of sin is restriction.
It says that anything that limits people's freedom is bad, which brings up some interesting questions.
Definitely.
Like, how do you deal with crime if you can't restrict people?
Well, the document says that crime happens when people can't follow their true will.
Okay.
So instead of just punishing them,
Yeah.
you need to figure out why they committed the crime
Right.
and help them find a way to live that doesn't hurt other people.
So that's a very different approach
Yeah.
than what we normally think about.
Totally.
It's about rehabilitation and understanding the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
The document presents a vision of a society where everyone is free to pursue their true will.
And that leads to a more fulfilling life for everyone.
That's the idea.
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept.
It is.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on this last section.
Okay.
Your duty to all other beings and things.
Yeah.
It seems like it goes even beyond human interactions.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to apply the law of Thelema to everything?
The main duty in this section is to apply the law of Thelema to everything.
Okay, so using it to solve problems.
Right.
And figuring out how to use and develop things.
Exactly.
Right.
This means understanding that everything in the universe has its own purpose.
So we should respect everything, even if it doesn't directly benefit us.
Right. It's about understanding that everything has its place.
Okay.
And that we should respect that.
So what does that look like?
Well, the document gives some examples.
Okay.
Like forcing kids to do jobs they're not good at. Or cutting down forests just because we want the wood right now.
Okay.
It says we should use things the way they're meant to be used.
Gotcha.
And be aware of the consequences if we don't.
So even a tree has its own right to exist.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay.
The document says that everything has a right to life. But sometimes human needs are more important.
Okay.
And we have to make tough choices.
But we should be aware of the consequences of our actions.
Exactly.
What are some of those consequences?
Well, the document talks about how cities can create social problems and how using up all of our resources can lead to fighting. It's reminding us that our choices affect everything.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But it also gives us hope that we can do better.
Right. We can create a better future.
Yeah.
If we work with nature.
Instead of against it.
Exactly.
Wow. This has been a really eye-opening discussion.
Yeah, it has.
About duty.pdf and the law of Thelema. We've talked about so much today.
We have.
From self-discovery and manipulating energies
right.
to our responsibilities to other people and the whole universe. That's a lot to take in.
It is. Let's give everyone a minute to process everything.
Yeah, this deep dive has been a real journey.
Definitely.
Exploring all the different layers of Thelema and what it means to live according to its principles.
It's really challenging the way we normally think about things.
It is. It encourages us to understand ourselves.
Yeah.
And our place in the universe better. All right.
Yes.
I think we're both ready to kind of jump back into duty.pdf.
Yeah, let's do it.
And continue this exploration of Thelema and how it can be applied to our lives.
Sounds good.
So we left off talking about manipulating energies and shaping your reality. But duty.pdf doesn't stop there.
It doesn't.
It also goes into a lot of detail about how to interact with other people, which seems kind of tricky when you think about the fact that it's all about individual will.
Yeah, how do you balance that with like being considerate of others?
Exactly.
It's a tough one.
So how do you reconcile those two seemingly contrasting ideas?
Well, the document actually addresses that head on.
Okay.
The first duty in this section is all about connection.
Okay.
It says, unite yourself passionately with every other focus of consciousness.
Okay. So it's acknowledging that we are all connected.
Exactly.
Even though we are individual.
We are all part of something bigger.
Right. And it also says love is the law, love under will.
Right. That's a key principle.
So it's not about isolating yourself
Nope.
in pursuit of your true will.
It's about understanding that you exist within this network of other beings.
Like we're all part of a bigger system.
Exactly. It's like we each have our own star, but we're all part of the same constellation.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
Thanks.
So then how does that interconnectedness actually play out in our daily lives?
Well, the second duty in this section says that you can't really harm another person.
Okay.
Even if you're in conflict with them.
So even when you disagree, you're not actually hurting them.
The document compares both love and war to like a game where the goal is to learn and grow.
Gotcha.
Not to destroy each other.
So even when you're fighting with someone, you're both learning from that experience.
That's the idea.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And that respect for the other person's journey
Yeah.
is really important for the third duty.
Yeah.
Which is not interfering with other people's true will.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that everyone has their own path to follow.
And that we shouldn't try to control them.
So each person is like a king.
Yes.
Ruling their own domain.
Exactly.
That's a powerful image.
It is. It's about respecting individual autonomy.
Even if you don't agree.
Right? Even if you wouldn't make the same choices.
So no more trying to force your beliefs on others?
Nope. Everyone gets to figure things out for themselves.
Now, what about when someone asks for guidance?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, does the document address that?
It does. The fourth duty in this section says that you should only help someone
Okay.
if they ask for it.
So it's their choice.
Yeah, and you should always respect their decisions.
Even if you think you know better.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to make their own choices.
I think our listeners might be wondering how this all plays out in real life.
It's definitely a shift.
Right.
From how we usually interact with people.
Yeah. How do you see these duties playing out in your own relationships?
It's made me a better listener.
Okay.
And more accepting of people's differences.
So you're not trying to change people?
Nope. I'm trying to understand them.
That's great.
I think it's led to deeper connections.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's one duty in this section that really stood out to me.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I was a bit confused by it at first.
What is it?
It says worship all.
Oh, yeah. That was a head-scratcher.
Right. How do you worship everyone?
Yeah, it seems to go against the idea of individual will.
That was my thought, too.
But it's not about worshiping in the traditional sense.
Okay, so what does it mean then?
It's about recognizing the value in every single person.
Okay.
And learning from them.
So you're not putting them on a pedestal.
Nope.
But you're seeing them as a source of knowledge and growth.
It's like approaching every interaction with a sense of reverence, openness to learning.
So it's more about respecting and appreciating than actual worship.
It's about recognizing the potential for growth in every encounter.
Even the difficult ones.
Especially the difficult ones.
Okay, so it's like actively studying human nature through your interactions with others.
It's about using those observations to refine your understanding of the world.
So we can learn something from every person we meet.
And that brings us back to that quote, to love ye do reverence. To me come ye through tribulation of ordeal, which is bliss.
Even the hard things can teach us something.
Exactly.
So we can approach those challenges with a sense of curiosity.
And openness.
Rather than fear or avoidance.
That's the key.
Okay, so it's about embracing the whole spectrum of human experience.
The good, the bad, and everything in between.
And using it to grow and learn.
Exactly. The document also emphasizes the importance of checking your own opinions.
Okay, so don't just assume you're right.
Right. You have to look at the world around you.
Yeah.
And see if your beliefs match up with reality.
So it's like constantly testing and refining your understanding.
That's how we grow.
Of the world.
Exactly.
Okay, so now I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about how the law of Thelema can be applied to society as a whole.
Sounds good.
The document says, establish the law of Thelema as the sole basis of conduct.
Ah, so now we're getting into the social and political implications.
Exactly. What does it look like?
It's basically saying that everyone should be free to find their true will.
Okay.
And that's how we create a better society.
So it's about individual freedom and self-discovery rather than imposing rules.
It's about letting people figure things out for themselves.
And that ties into the concept of sin is restriction.
Right.
Which basically says that limiting people's freedom is wrong.
Yeah, any kind of restriction is harmful.
Which leads to some interesting questions.
Definitely. Like, how do you deal with crime?
Exactly. Would a society based on understanding criminals just lead to chaos?
That's a common concern.
So how does the document address that?
It says that crime happens when people are prevented from following their true will.
So it's like a symptom of a deeper problem.
Exactly.
And how do you solve that problem?
By addressing the root causes.
Okay, so not just punishing people.
Right. It's about understanding why they did what they did.
And helping them find a best path.
Yeah. Rehabilitation and creating opportunities.
So it's a much more compassionate approach.
It is. It's about seeing people as individuals.
Rather than just criminals.
Exactly.
That's a really different way of thinking about justice.
It is. It's about creating a society where everyone has the chance to thrive.
And fulfill their true will.
Exactly.
So, okay, so it's a utopian vision.
It is. It's a vision of a world where everyone is free.
To be themselves.
And contribute their unique gifts to society.
It's definitely something to think about.
It is. It challenges a lot of our assumptions.
How society should function.
And it's a good reminder that there are other ways of doing things.
Now, before we wrap up this section, I want to touch on one last part of the document.
Yeah. What is it?
It's called Your Duty to All Other Beings and Things.
So now we're expanding beyond just humans.
Exactly. Yeah. It seems like it's taking this idea of interconnectedness to a whole new level.
It is. It's about recognizing that everything is connected.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
Well, the main duty in this section
is
to apply the law of Thelema to everything.
To everything?
Yeah, not just people.
So like plants, animals, the environment.
Everything.
Okay, so how do you do that?
It's about understanding that everything has its own purpose.
Okay.
And respecting that purpose.
So even a tree has a role to play.
Exactly.
And we should respect that role.
Right.
Even if it doesn't directly benefit us.
It's about recognizing the inherent value in all things.
So what are some examples of how we might violate this duty?
Well, the document talks about things like forcing kids to do jobs they're not suited for.
Okay.
Or destroying forests just for the short-term gain.
So it's about using things according to their nature.
And being mindful of the consequences.
If we don't.
Exactly.
So even a tree has a right to fulfill its purpose.
In a sense, yes.
Okay, so it's not just about human needs.
It's about recognizing the needs of everything.
And finding a balance.
Exactly.
But what are some of the consequences of not finding that balance?
Well, the document warns about things like social problems caused by overpopulation and conflicts over resources.
So our actions have consequences.
Yeah, they ripple out and affect everything.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, but it's also empowering.
How so?
Because it means we have the power to create a better future.
By making more conscious choices.
By respecting the interconnectedness of all things.
Working with nature.
Instead of against it.
That's a really beautiful message.
It is. It's about finding harmony.
And balance.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been a really deep exploration.
It has.
Of duty.pdf and the law of Thelema.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
From self-discovery and manipulating energies to our responsibilities to other people and the entire universe.
It's a lot to digest.
It is. So let's give our listeners a moment to process.
Yeah, let's take a breath.
This deep dive has been a real journey.
It has.
Through the intricacies of Thelema.
And what it means to live by its principles.
It's a framework for life that challenges us to think differently.
About ourselves.
And our place in the world.
Exactly.
So are you ready to share some final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. This duty.pdf.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense stuff.
It is. It's definitely.
It's a whole different way of looking at life.
It is. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, not at all.
But it's definitely thought-provoking.
Yeah, even if you don't agree with everything.
Right.
It makes you think.
Yeah, about your values.
Right. And how you treat other people.
And even like your relationship with the universe.
That's the big one.
Right. It's like a whole new perspective.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes it so valuable.
Yeah, you don't have to follow it exactly.
Right.
But it makes you question things.
It makes you think critically.
Yeah, and examine your own beliefs.
That's what's important.
So what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
I hope they come away with a sense of curiosity.
Okay.
Like a willingness to explore new ideas.
Even if they seem a little out there.
Exactly. Even if they challenge your current beliefs.
Because this law of Thelema, as it's presented in duty.pdf.
It's not for everyone.
Right.
But it offers a unique perspective.
On things like personal responsibility.
Right. And how society should be structured.
And how we're all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
I love that. It's not about blindly accepting anything.
Nope.
It's about questioning and exploring.
And finding what works for you.
Exactly. And that's what makes life so interesting.
It is. It's all about learning and growing.
So keep exploring these ideas.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to dive deeper.
Maybe read a book on Thelema.
Or something related.
Yeah. That's a whole world out there.
A whole universe of knowledge.
And on that note,
yeah,
we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Into duty.pdf and the law of Thelema.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. Until next time, keep those minds open.
And keep exploring.